Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Sandy Stewart sitting in for Barnett.
Hi, Freeman.
So fun.
I know.
This is the first time we've done this, just you and I.
I know.
We've been on air a lot together, but always as part of usually the Wives show.
That's right.
First of the year. Hey, I want to start out by asking our audience a question. Do you have a book inside of you wanting to come out? Our dear friend Randy Davila, who's the CEO of Hampton Roads Publishing as well as Hierophant Publishing. He's published amazing authors, Damiel Ruiz, Dalai Lama, Richard Bach, Neil Donald Walsh, Byron Katie, and many others, is leading a course. And the course is on how to write and get published. So we want to direct you guys to his website, www.getpublishedclass.com. Amazing opportunity to work with an amazing guy, good friend of the show, and I'm sure it's going to be an amazing resource and opportunity. So if you feel like you got a book in you and you want to find a way to get from where you are to actually getting out in the world, we want to offer that opportunity. Sandy, how are you?
I'm really good.
It was so fun hanging out this morning.
I know. That was a great conversation. I actually wanted to keep it going.
I think we're going to. That's what we're doing
exactly.
here, right? One thing I didn't mention to you, when I went to get my coffee, there was a woman getting her coffee, chatting with one of the other ladies there, and she said something really interesting. So the woman said to her, how's it going? And she said, work. And she said, yeah, I know, work. And then she said, well, in 2 weeks I go on vacation, so I guess I'm excited about that. And it's fascinating because you and I had just got done. And I had said to you, were at work last week, of course, in Italy, not the worst place in the world to work, doing is it 8 days?
8-day intensive, yeah.
8-day intensive, leading an 8-day intensive. And you were so fired up about it, and it was so awesome. And I'm going next week because I have work in Mexico with my training, Women in Leadership training that Susan and I are facilitating with a major bank in Mexico. And I'm so excited to be going to work. So what I wanted to point out is it's a kind of flip, right? I think a lot of people are living in the paradigm of, I work to be able to get a break, right? And you and I, and Barnett, and many of the people in our community, because we love what we do, it's a shift where, oh my gosh, I get to go to work next week,
Yeah, and it's not a shift that comes easily. For many, many years, I went to work like those women. And at a certain point, the gig is up and your soul is screaming and something's got to shift. And sometimes the new work may not look as abundant financially as the old work. And you have to make some choices.
Yeah.
And that's scary. It's sort of easier to complain and keep going.
Right. Well, and there's so much support for that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's interesting is, because again, I've been working now for, we started, let's see, in November of last year with this major bank in Mexico, with my partner Susan, doing a Women in Leadership training as part of a diversity initiative. And part of the work is starting where you are. So a lot of us, I think, have this notion, if I were doing something else, I'd be happy. Jasmine and I have talked about this a bit, and you know about this conversation where so much of what she wants to create in the world, we've realized is right where she is, right? This story of, I have to go somewhere else to do it, versus reorienting sort of internally and doing it right where you are. It's not really about the job. It's just, what are we up to creating and how can we create it in the moment with what's going on?
Yeah. And time, I realized when I was in the transition of moving from what I didn't love, but what worked abundantly, to what I love, what was abundance to me? And the answer was time. Like if time was the most precious resource, because what I needed was time to just sit with my discomfort that I really didn't know what I wanted next. I knew the feeling, I knew how I wanted to feel next, but I didn't know how to get there. And that was scary. And I had to sort of stop everything and be in that discomfort of not having me with my title as my identification.
Yeah.
And so I think for many women, we don't give ourselves the time, and I know our guest today knows a lot about that, but we don't give ourselves the time we need to go inside and find the answers that are there.
What's interesting to me, and then I do want to bring our guest on, is that I think the bridge to speaking about this in terms of women, while it's a stretch, is not that tricky. Where I think it gets really tricky is considering this in the context of men. Because here's the deal. From my perspective, this is a conversation that women can move to. Again, it's a leap. I mean, I get that moving into this conversation about what's really going on, what's the feeling I want to create, is profound versus what do I need to do to match a cultural, expectation or ideal. I think, and we may touch on this. I know this conversation is going to be about women. I get it, and I'm fine having that conversation.
Well, you can't have that part without the other part.
Well, you can actually. I think that, a lot of women are having this conversation, and the men are sort of on the periphery, going, "I don't know, I got to work,"
Right.
So that'll be an interesting twist. Is great. This is a totally apropos conversation for women today in this moment, which this author, who we're going to introduce in a minute, is right in the conversation. I'm just wondering where it becomes a conversation that's more inclusive, where men can jump in and say, wait a minute, what's my heart's longing? What's my soul's desire? Versus so stuck in the conditioning of, well, I got to work. I don't know. I'm a guy. I got to work. I don't know. Who says I can go think about this? What time? What space? What are you talking about? Who do we got today?
Okay, well, let's find out what she has to say about this. I'm really excited. Today we have HeatherAsh Amara with us, and she is the founder of Toki, the Toltec Center for Creative Intent, which I love. Creative Intent.
That's awesome.
Based in Austin, Texas. HeatherAsh has studied and taught extensively with Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the Four Agreements, our friend.
And good friend of us, good friend of the show.
The Ruiz family. Yep. She was raised in Southeast Asia and has traveled all over the world, so her writings and teachings are really a blend of Toltec wisdom, European shamanism, Buddhism, and Native American ceremony. She's the author of that book, The Warrior Goddess Training, also The Toltec Path of Transformation, and is co-author of No Mistakes, How You Can Change Adversity into Abundance.
Welcome to the show. And for those of you who are listening, I was also holding up the book for people who watch on YouTube. Welcome, HeatherAsh. HeatherAsh, are you with us?
She left.
Oh, well, we'll have to get her back online. Oh, that's such a great build-up. Let's get the phone number back again.
Okay.
Did we write it down?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're going to pass that over to our producer. We're always ready.
See, we said we wanted to keep the conversation going. Be careful for what you wish, right?
That's right. That is wild.
And I will keep the conversation going while we're calling her up, okay?
Otherwise, we'd have dead air. That's not good for radio.
No, that's not good for radio. And I can't sing, so we're in trouble.
I can't either.
But what you brought up just before we tried to introduce HeatherAsh was that piece about what women more easily can go into, the willingness to be vulnerable and be in the unknown, or be in what I have come to call knowing without certainty.
I love that.
I am in a place of knowing without certainty and being okay with that. And men, I mean, as a man, you can talk about it better than I can. You're trained to know, to have all the answers, right?
Not knowing gets very frightening. We talk about this on the show, the empowered I don't know. We've even called this sacred I don't know.
Right.
Where, as men, we very literally put the clutch in on our knowing so that we can grow, because we're so accustomed to needing to know and wanting to have answers that the wandering and wondering and that vulnerability feels disorganizing. Hey, I think we have HeatherAsh back. Are you with us, HeatherAsh?
I am back, yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry we lost you there.
I don't know. I was on the phone
it's okay. I'm just sorry we lost you, and I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know if you've been able to track the conversation that Sandy and I have been in, but it's this way that a lot of women, because we're really talking about women, though I think there's a broader conversation to be had, are bumping up against the traditional roles or even the new roles that the last 20 years have offered women to step into the work world and so many other opportunities. But there's a topping out where something more, there's a longing for something more. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely.
And I feel like your book is all about helping women break through and connect with a deeper sense of what might be available for them.
Yes. Yeah. And there's that way that and I think this is true for all humans. I think it's really acute with women right now, because as we've stepped through getting empowered, and there's always stages we go through as when any group becomes empowered, and the first stage is usually to take on power in a form that's what's acceptable in the culture.
You mean an outside sense of power,
yes.
Power over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the first stage is, okay, well, we'll be powerful the way the culture says this is how you're powerful. And I think what's happening for women now is we're recognizing it's not quite what I was looking for.
Yes, I can so relate. Years ago, being one of the first women in a men's business, I
at a major brand clothing company.
Yeah, I really was very, very intent in playing in a man's world and empowering myself. But the only role models I had were men. So the only thing I could do was be a woman and become a man to be empowered. And then I got there and went, wow, this doesn't feel good. I'm not a man. So how do I empower myself as a woman? That's a big question, isn't it?
It is. It is. And it's really beautiful because what I see is that women are now going, okay, wait a minute. What are the gifts we actually bring forward? Right. What are the things that are needed? How do we share our energy and our vision and our creativity in our way as individuals and as women? And that we can then help everybody else find their way because everybody's oppressed. It's not just women.
That's a critical piece of the puzzle. What's fascinating to me, because I work in this world of women's empowerment, I'm part of a training team. I'm the man in the training team, predominantly women training team, working with women specifically in Mexico, specifically at a major bank, is the mindset that has been the dominant mindset, this vertical mindset, right? It very much command control. It's what you know. It's being the boss, the general, if you will, and barking orders, and then everyone's obedient. That model and the mindset and the models that come out of it are broken. I mean, business now is moving fast, and there's this horizontal mindset where it's about team building, and it's about building community, and it's about people feeling a sense of purpose. So what I think is fascinating is women are thriving in this new model. Yeah. And so it's really, the conversation about the warrior goddess training is up. I think, it's a hot property. This is something that women are ready for, and it's helping them advance in all kinds of areas of their life. I do think it's a generous offer for everyone, but I think there's an interesting trend where, men are feeling more and more disenfranchised. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I definitely feel that as well. And there's a gap that's growing, unfortunately, that there's a place for women. There's a lot of support for women. There's a lot of realization this has to change. And I feel like for the men, there's not as much support right now. That there's this gap that's growing that we're, as a culture, as a humanity, are going to have to figure out how to bridge.
Yeah, I also think that, a lot of us talk and have been speaking on this program and in other venues about this new world that we're ushering in. What worked for so long, all of a sudden doesn't work, and what got us here, if we don't change it, is going to kill us. And so the time is perfect for a new voice. And women sat quietly and watched and reaped the benefits of a lot of men's hard work that men have done, to move us along as a civilization in the old paradigm. Sure. And we're at that point. I think lots of us are at that point personally. What got us this far, if we don't change it, is going to kill us, and as a culture as well. So it's a perfect time for this new voice to come in, this voice that has been sitting quietly and has been able and has been given permission to sit with unknowingness as an accepted way of being. And we have to bring this innocent unknowingness to the problems of the world, because we can't, fixing them the same old way is just not working.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so in a sense, the men did lead and we followed. And I think that it's a dance. And now the women are beginning to lead out of an intuition and a knowingness that they've had time to develop. And then the men, and then ultimately will be in this perfect harmonious dance, and the new world will be created.
All right, well,
but isn't that the dream?
It is. Well, and let's make it a vision. I mean, I'm okay with the idea that that's what we're aspiring to create, is a harmony, a
and
rebalancing
balance,
of masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's really, really true.
Yeah. Let's do this. I want to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk about how this integrates into the training, right? Because the title of your book and the basis for your work is really leading women into the new paradigm for them. And I'm curious how the step of integrating and being a generous offer to men so that they can feel more comfortable stepping into the new paradigm fits. So we will discuss that, but first we have to take a break. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Welcome back. I'm here with Freeman Michaels. This is so much fun, Freeman.
Yay.
So great to be here. And we're here with our guest, HeatherAsh. And before we left for the commercial break, Freeman, you brought up the inquiry about the training. What training is necessary for women to move into this role of personal power and leadership, and how that can influence and help men also move to their true, authentic power and leadership. So, HeatherAsh, do you have anything to say about your training, and specifically that you have found to be transformational and helpful for this question or this exploration?
Well, the training is about helping women to really come into their center and let go of old paradigm, old structures, old ways that we've kept ourselves safe, so that we're really in alignment and in attunement with inspiration rather than memory. I love that quote by
that's
Hugh
beautiful.
Len. Yeah.
Inspiration rather than memory.
Yeah. And so in order for the whole paradigm to shift, there has to be a vanguard of people that are willing to step completely out of the paradigm and, like we've been talking about, into that place of not knowing. Because I believe there has to be a spaciousness where the old dissolves, but then we're not quite sure what the new is yet.
Right.
There's that in-between space. And
liminal state.
Yeah.
We're not what we've been, and we're not yet what we're going to become.
Yes.
That's a very feminine principle, by the way. That whole, that principle, the feminine principle of the space, right? Again, the masculine is the doing energy, and it can be in men and women. I'm not saying this is gender specific, but the space for the I don't know, unnerving, right?
Very.
Disorganizing, confusing.
Yeah.
Well, if you think of having one foot on one side of the river, right, and that's the past, and the other foot is on the other side of the river.
I don't know if it's on the other side of the river. I think it's on a barge that's sliding that way, and we're doing the splits here.
It's in the middle of the river. I love the image of standing in the middle of the river, and the force of the river is really strong, and the temptation is I'm going to back up because I know it's safe back there.
Yes, exactly.
But that's where we are. I feel like we're right in the middle of the river, and if we as women can take a step forward and move to the other side and go, got it, it's good, come on over.
What's the generous offer for men? Here's why I ask it this way. I get that the wave of feminism that created this opportunity was totally required based on the old paradigm. And yet, it still came out of the old paradigm, which was kind of an us versus them kind of mentality, right? Women are fighting for their peace, and it was appropriate. I'm not diminishing that at all. And yet, I feel like that's almost something that women have to get over? Because if they're still in a fight, then we're still stuck in the old paradigm. How does it shift to become a generous offer? Because I do think that men will put down to the best of their ability. Because look, it's a lot of programming for men that we're doers, and vulnerability for us, no thank you, you know? So putting down our armor is not necessarily our first, instinct. How does the work that women are doing create an environment where men feel safe to do that?
It's a feeling sense. Mm-hmm. So you're really correct that there was a fight energy before, and it's going to take some time for men to realize that the transformation isn't coming from that any longer for women. And I think it's going to take women a while to rewire that. And that's why I love the Warrior Goddess training, because that's the training. To unwire, it's a fight. To unwire that we have to do, and that there's something that we're concrete that we're going to move towards that's going to fix everything. Mm-hmm. And to really go into that I don't know space and that generous, open heart space and possibility, and anchor that in our bodies so deeply that the feelings, everybody feels it.
Mm-hmm. And the challenge, I think, as I hear you speak, I'm feeling in my body. So there's roles, there's feminine energies and there's masculine energies, and we all, of course, have both, men and women. But there are particular energies that are masculine, and that as women we depend on to complete us, and the same with men. How do we honor and hold those individual precious elements of masculine and feminine within ourselves as a woman and as a man? Because it can get very mushy. It can get very confusing and very mushy.
I'm going to answer in I don't know. Not because we don't have ideas, right? I think part of the shift in the conversation is out of the knowing and needing an expert and into ideas and possibilities that are worth exploring. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
And creativity.
And creativity, yeah.
And I also feel like the whole masculine-feminine model, that's part of the old paradigm for me. Because it's a binary system. We're not in a binary system anymore in terms of it's black and white. Gender is so fluid.
Mm-hmm. Well, now this is the difference in the conversation. I think what Sandy was saying is the energies versus identifying with the energies as gender specific. Yeah. I think we're going into an age where gender identity is going to be less and less critical. You have people who have sort of done enough work to be able to have a broader perspective on possibility and model that. Mm-hmm. And you have folks who haven't, and it could be men and women. I just think that women have a greater sense of this. I think it's the bridge, as it were, the leap is easier. I mean, what I was saying earlier about just men being programmed not to feel vulnerable, like that's the last thing I want. And my sense is it's required for this leap, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's an easier offer for women. But what I'm wondering, and I'm still wondering, and again, I'm not asking for an answer where we know the answer. I'm okay with the idea that none of us know. But how do women show up as a generous offer with compassion and understanding for how disorganizing this is for your average American male? I mean, maybe worldwide, but I'm just talking about what I know, which as an American man, I can kind of say, look, we weren't taught to embrace this stuff. How does that work? Because I do think women are stepping into more and more leadership. I believe that. I'm part of pushing that. That's great. Where's the part of the training where there's a way to reach back? I don't know. Back might be vertical and reach over and support something, a vision for men.
That actually, when you said that, it triggered me a little bit.
Go for it.
Yeah, because I actually got this don't make it all about you. I've spent a lifetime making it all about you.
Wow, that's
I've
great.
Taken care of you.
Yeah.
I've done 2 jobs. I've gone out to work and come home and made dinner and washed the dishes. I've made it all about you my whole life.
Yeah.
And in this moment, I'm giving myself the space to explore me.
You go.
And when I am complete exploring, when I have given myself sufficient space, there will be a synergy, I have no doubt. I don't know how it's going to look,
Good job.
but I have to come back here first. I have spent my whole life looking out there and making sure you're okay, so I'm okay.
That's so good. That's so
Does that
good.
make
HeatherAsh,
sense?
what do you got for us?
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
And it's that if we as women can really come back to our own centers, because we are so wired, exactly as you're saying, we're so wired to take care of everybody else. And it's scary. I mean, there's a lot of guilt. I mean, I'm helping women. Part of the Warrior Goddess training is helping women work through the guilt, work through the I should, work through all the old paradigm thoughts, feelings, to come back to, I can have compassion for myself. I can put myself first. I can open my awareness to what my needs are.
Yes, and when
then that will allow everything to transform, but it has to happen at a really deep level, and it's going to take time because it's a lot of programming.
Yeah, I get it. And just what you said, to find that self-compassion, I know when I really jump into that place of self-compassion and I can be there and like, oh, I did the best I could with what I had. Any little girl would have made these decisions to survive, and now I can make different decisions. Then I have so much compassion for my man.
Exactly.
I have so much compassion when he falls into a place where he's communicating with me from his 2-year-old self. I get it. And I could and I don't make it about me. I can just be with it.
I want to share my version of this experience. So one of the things when I first started my work, probably like 1990-ish, somewhere in there, some things happened in my life, and and there was some men's work that I was becoming aware of, right? And so what happened for me is initially, I always went to women when I was feeling vulnerable, right? Because in my world, growing up, you don't go to dad or my uncles or the men in my life with that, or they'll like hit you and tell you to stop crying, kid.
Yeah.
So I went to women with my vulnerability, which at the time meant my girlfriend or the other women in my life, really my girlfriend, but it wasn't working out so well. And so when I got into the men's work, and it was the first time I was having my experience, my feeling experience in relationship with other men, it was very empowering because now I didn't feel like a little boy, right? Going to him with my feelings. I was able to sort of honor and take care of my feelings for myself. So what I think is interesting, because one of the things I've struggled with, I've done lots of men's work and even led men's work, but sort of felt like, but there's so many, most men aren't interested. And what I think is arising right now in the moment is, but they probably will be. So what I want to say about the first inquiry, which was how do women show up as a more generous offer for men, is it's not necessarily their job to. I mean, maybe they can in moments, and that's great, but allow men the dignity of their own journey. And this whole old paradigm is probably going to have to come apart, and it might be painful and hard if you are not identified with your job and your knowing and your status in the world, and you have to go through your dark night of the soul collectively. I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think what you're saying, when I said I don't want it to be about you, I want to have time and go in, and I want you to go in and do your work. But
not because I need you to so I feel safe, but because go do your job.
Yeah, that's your work, and this is my work.
Yeah,
and out of our work, what are we going to create? What synergy is what's going to be birthed?
What's interesting is that feels like a generous offer.
Yeah.
So going back to the original question, I think we just muddled through and found a little generous offer in there.
Do your work, people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, or create a conversation that has space for everyone to contribute.
Shine the flashlight in rather than out, Shine the flashlight in and clear up the cobwebs and look at what's really there that's not serving us and feel our own vulnerability and then come together from that place. How authentic and powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that what's really important in this is that what's being held as the container for the exploration, male, female, is that, whichever, is that the container is absolute respect for all choices, for all points of view, and a deep respect for our own perception, our own connection, our own consciousness, and then that generosity that everybody has their own dream, and that we honor that dream. We may not agree, but that we honor it and that we have compassion for how challenging it is to let go of the paradigm and the old structures and the old beliefs. Then things are going to change.
When none of us have to be right.
That's it.
Yes.
Because that is vertical. I mean, again, it's interesting. When we shift to horizontal, I'm sorry I'm using, it feels like jargon, and I don't mean it to be jargon. It's just the only language I have right now, right?
Because you're a man.
I gotta figure out a way.
I say that lovingly. No, I had to make a little joke.
Yeah. But where it's a broader way of operating, where it's not about my knowing, it's about my exploration, right? Yeah. Then I think that feels good to everybody. The new criteria is feel. How does it feel? Which is more reliable than how I think, right? That's what I think we've bumped up against as the crux of the paradigm shift is, great, I'm glad you think all those things. That's a repeating of what you know. The exploration in the future is, the bright and possible future is something we have to feel our way into.
Yeah, and feeling, the question of how do you feel, for me, a great gift and tool was to get into my body. And so earlier when I said, oh, that triggered me, well, you might ask, well, how did I know? It didn't happen in my head. Right. My chest tightened up. My stomach tightened up a little bit. I got some adrenaline, and I knew, that doesn't feel in alignment to what I'm feeling right now. Yeah. And to go into that place and trust that our body can give us the messages for what's true and authentic, and what isn't true and authentic for us is, that's that shining the flashlight in. The body will tell us all, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful gift when we can find it.
I love it. I love it, but I think it's tricky because I think it's the age-old fight that men and women have, where a woman says to the guy, what are you feeling? And he says, well, I think, because the feeling's been cut off. I mean, it's an early piece of the male sort of wounding where you're 5 years old and you're told to stop crying. Yeah.
And if we keep asking the question, how do you know? How do you know? This is what I think. How do you know? How do you know? How do you know?
Oh, that's good.
We'll finally, I believe, a man or a woman will get to, well, I know because I don't feel good. Yeah. Or I know because I'm angry.
Oh, that's good.
Well, where are you angry?
It's innate.
If we keep asking, how do you know? Because we know.
Yeah.
Just keep asking ourselves to show up the part of us that knows.
Yeah, keep dropping deeper in.
Yeah, deeper in, exactly.
So tell us, HeatherAsh, because we've got a few more minutes, first of all, I'd love for you to personalize this in terms of what's up for you? Like, I get that you're doing the women's training and it's empowering, and that's awesome. But what's up for you if you were to more personalize it, like in terms of this issue? We just want to get to know you a little better.
Yeah, well, it's a great question because I've been having conversations with Randy, with my publisher, for a while around, can I invite the men? I know, I love Randy. Like, can I invite men to the workshops? No. Well, how do I do this when we have some men? No. And because I really want to include everybody. And so it's been a little challenging for me just to work with women. Now that even though I love it, now that I'm doing it more and more, I'm really feeling like, okay, yes, like we need to have our own space to go deep. But my biggest picture, I don't want to get categorized in, oh yeah, she's the woman's person. Because I'm not. I'm all about life, freedom, consciousness. So that's part of what my exploration is how to empower women in such a way that it doesn't do it so women then go, oh, well, we're better than men, or we have to stay separate from men. Because that's not...
The old paradigm again.
To an end, yeah.
The old paradigm again.
Old paradigm.
I have a little insight that recently our friend Marcy Cole, who does First Tuesdays, which is a beautiful organization to support women in all the similar ways that we're talking, started doing some occasional, not all the time, introduction or events that included men. I went to one recently, and it was great. It was great that the women invited us into their space, as it were, and it was. I felt great. I didn't feel like what would be the language. I didn't feel like it was a charity thing. Like, okay, you can come. No, I mean, I felt like really good about it. It was great. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you know what I'm talking about, because your daughter was running the show. Sophie was part of, she's the one who checked me in that day. But it was cool. It was really cool.
And I think both things are important. I think, HeatherAsh, what you said is so important that for a long time we didn't give ourselves the time and the space as women to be together. I mean, in the very old days, we did, and that's where we learned and grew and supported each other, and then we lost that. So to bring that back is very, very important. It's something that the grandmothers knew, and it's important. And I like this idea of inviting in the men and putting your toe in the water and seeing, okay, from this place of support from my women, how now is it different when the men come in? So there's a learning for the women as well with that invitation.
Well, and a whole slew of husbands and boyfriends and friends of these women came. I mean, there was a whole bunch of guys that came.
Yeah.
I think in part because we were all curious, like, what's going on in these circles?
What are they doing?
And, that's the mutuality of loving relationships. There has to be mutuality, and that is what turns you on, what turns me on, and can we share it? Yeah. So to keep it separate, I agree with you, ultimately does not make sense, but it may be developmental. It may be what we need right now.
Yeah. And I've been dreaming into, and I'm super excited about this idea of having events where the women go separate, the men go separate, and then they come back together. And so there's that coming and going that I think is that's the bridging piece that we're needing. Is to have separate time, but also have, like, how do we create separation, bring it together, and then go back and create the separation and go, okay, how was it? How'd you do? Did you get out of your center?
Yeah, exactly.
That's really great, too, a debrief on how it went. So this is what's so inspiring and so important for me is we've got so I do these women's in leadership training. I'm part of a team. And Susan, who I work with, who also does this separate from me, recently did a training, and the last half of the last day, they invited the bosses, which weren't all men, it was men and women, of the women who went through this. This was for administrative professionals. And she did an empowerment training and leadership training for them. And they brought them in to do vision work about their relationship. Again, from this horizontal model where we're teaming and partnering to create bigger possibility for all parties concerned. And she said it was amazingly powerful. So I'm going to tomorrow present to the person who owns the company that we integrate this into our second phase of the program, because I think it's brilliant. What if we, after these women go through this incredible empowerment training, then invite in some cases it'll be men, in many cases the men who are their bosses or whatever, into a co-creation. And it's a little nerve-wracking, but I feel like it's required, and I think they'll respond well.
Yeah, it's a moment in life, right? You're creating a moment in time and space, but then you have to go out and take this moment into your life. And in life, just like HeatherAsh said, there's a coming and going. We all need time to go off by ourselves, reflect, get internal, and then come back together and bring the gifts.
And I think the guys will come.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm like right now in this in the moment awareness that, so wait a minute, the guys came to the first Tuesdays, and I think they'll come to this last day of the second phase of the training if we create the space and make it, again, this language, generous offer. I think they'll be into it, and I think that is what's really going to shift the paradigm organizationally within this bank. But I'm going to go bigger, like in the world, is where women are going off and doing profound work that everyone will ultimately benefit from, and then there's an invitation for men to join.
And it's so wonderful that you're doing it in a culture that really does have such strong role identities and generational themes, and to be able to break through those paradigms really does change the world.
Well, we're working on it. HeatherAsh, what are you up to
We're
next?
all working on it, right?
Well, tell folks where they can come get into the work that you're doing there in Austin, and when you travel around the globe, perhaps. What's going on?
Lots of things are going on. So I'm doing a lot of touring, a lot of different online courses and such. And so warriorgoddess.com is a great place to check out for different programs. And I'm so excited. I'm about to start this huge Kickstarter event to do Warrior Goddess film and TV.
Nice.
To start interviewing different people. And I'm going to interview men and women and so
keep the conversation going.
Keep the conversation going, exactly.
Yeah,
and I really want to bring the men into the conversation. So I love that this feels like a part of the launch of that.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, we support you, and both Sandy and I love the book, Warrior Goddess Training. So we invite you listeners, please, to go out, check that out, get a copy. It's great material. Check out what HeatherAsh is doing. And thank you, HeatherAsh, for joining us today.
Thanks so much. It was really fun to have a conversation with both of you.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
For those of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned because Sandy and I will be back after the break to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Sandy Stewart. Just
Hi, Freeman.
Getting back into the groove. It's so fun.
I know. It's really fun. As we said at the beginning, I've done shows with Barnett, and there's an extra added little opportunity for collaborating in that circumstance. But this is like very, very fun and different. I'm really enjoying it.
Totally. It's great. I love the conversation because it is the conversation I'm in. You know, Susan and I talk about a new partnering paradigm, which is very much how I see your relationship with Barnett. It's very much how I see her relationship with Jared, and obviously my relationship with my wife. We really aspire to be partners, right? So we're not as concerned with the gender roles. Not to pretend like that stuff doesn't creep in, because it does, even if we have this aspiration to kind of put it down and say, you know, who wants to handle, you know, cooking, or who wants to handle a particular duty, as it were. Duty is the wrong word, role. Well, who's best equipped? Who's available? You know, and what is the larger context for it? Meaning, what's our vision? What do we want to create as a quality of experience, as a feeling versus as an outcome? Big shift. So that's the bigger conversation. That's the bigger potential. And then I think a lot of women, I mean, you're leading women's circles. My wife is going to work with you in the next training you do, which we talked about a little bit. So, you know, yes, create the circles and then come back together, you know, both in couples and in larger communities.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about it with HeatherAsh, but it's so important for women and men to be courageous enough to do their own work. And I can say, as a woman, I still want to be able to depend on my man. I want to be able to feel safe when I'm not feeling safe. Sometimes I want to be able to get that safety and security. It's still a need. And the more Barnett, since I'll speak to him about him directly, the more he does his work, the more dependable he is to me.
That's awesome.
And the more he doesn't have to do anything in the world. It's not about what he does in the world. It's the more authentic and the deeper he goes and the more honest he is and the more he can reveal his fears and his insecurities and own his strengths and beauty, I can then fall into his arms because he is so dependable in his authenticity.
So knowing the part of me that is untrustworthy is what makes me trustworthy.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the big shift.
Absolutely.
That's the big shift. It's interesting because I've said before that my confidence includes my insecurity. What I didn't know most of my life was I always held them as separate, like they couldn't occupy the same space. I was confident, which means I wasn't feeling insecure. Of course, that broke down because I feel I have insecurities. I'm not sure if, you know, I'm good at something or whatever. You know, I get a little scared. So what happened in the breakdown at some point is I started to get radically self-accepting of the parts of me I formerly held as unacceptable. And that then created a level of trustworthiness to myself.
Right.
So today, that my confidence, the self I'm confident in, gets insecure sometimes. That's the big shift.
Yeah.
Right? I used to hold them as separate. Oh, I couldn't be both. Well, I am both. I'm confident and insecure. So now I have a confidence in the sense of myself that sometimes gets insecure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you're saying that, I just like sort of saw this dance where you're confident and you're big and you're out there and you get insecure, but the insecurity happens when you actually leave that confidence that lives within you. Let me say it a different way. The insecurity happens when we abandon ourselves, when we disown our own gifts and talents and beauty. We're not just talented and gifted and beautiful. We're talented, gifted, beautiful, complex, insecure, all that. But when we can embrace all that, as you said, then we are with ourselves. We're totally with ourselves. And I find for me, as you said, this workshop coming up, when I start to get insecure that, oh my God, these women are coming and they're paying money to get something, I have left myself and I've gone to focusing on what they're going to get rather than owning my gift.
Yeah.
And if I can own my gift and bring that to the training and my passion for what I've learned to the training, what they get or what they don't get is 100% their responsibility.
Totally.
And the insecurity goes away.
Yeah.
So it's when I give up my gift. It's almost like I throw away my gift when I make it about how you feel about me.
That's so powerful. What comes to mind for me is, so we were talking earlier about vulnerability and the idea of embracing my insecurities and my fears and whatever, the hurtful moments in my life where I was, felt small or felt rejected or any of that. Initially, my mindset was that was weakness. Typical, again, American male programming. The growth is to see that isn't weakness, that it's part of my experience and it comes along too. So the dimension that gets added when I'm okay with my vulnerability is a kind of relatability, humility or humanity, which then, people go, oh, I get it, Freeman, versus this, I'm confident, which is this sort of, I'm confident in this kind of manufactured self, right? It really is kind of that kind of confidence is a kind of self-abandonment.
It's completely, it's inauthentic. And when you just did that, when you just went, I'm confident, you were not dependable at all for me.
Right.
When you just spoke about owning your insecurities and you like sort of spoke in this circular way.
Who knew?
I was completely drawn in and you were so dependable. Like I could depend on you because you know yourself.
Yeah.
And if you know yourself, then I'm going to be okay if I depend on you. When you say, I'm dependable, I know you don't know you, and so how can I trust you?
Yeah, so that is, this is so critical. I almost want to say, let's take this and project this out. This is one piece that This
is a lifetime.
No, but it's so good.
The hologram,
The male-female dynamic and where it's shifting is authenticity is where a man can step into what would traditionally be reliable, dependable, that feels so right for a man. Well, okay, in the past it was because he was strong and he could protect, and in a world that there isn't enough resources, he'd go out and find the resources or fight for the resources. Okay, new paradigm, new world order. Dependable is self-awareness, the ability to be vulnerable and not know, and that is a new kind of manliness that is very attractive to women.
And
who knew?
Very attractive to women, and actually, you can learn that from women.
Yes.
But you can learn it from women who, when they are undependable. So let me just give you an example.
Okay.
So when your wife says to you, I'm making this up because I don't know if she says it. I have said it, but many wives say it.
Jasmine.
I know, but I'm just saying. Just saying. When your wife says to you, never mind, I can do it. I'm okay. I can do it. Never mind, I'll pick up the kids. I'll go to work. I'll do this. I'm okay. How dependable, how safe do you really, really feel? Whereas when she says to you, oh, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, but I think we can work this out. how about if you do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I'll take on this little extra today. I can do that today. How safe do you feel then? You know,
Totally.
So that it's okay. I can do it. And many women have taken that on because we've learned that from men. We've learned that that's what it is to be strong. And
Well,
if I do that for you, you're going to like me.
Yeah, no,
and all
the
it does is
opposite's
create
true.
space.
It renders me impotent.
Yes.
Right? Because now it's like, well, she's going to go do everything, and who am I? I'm feeling like a
and
loser.
it's kind of like
you know?
saying, I'll do it because you so-and-so, you just can't. You failed.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is it is actually vertical, right? Again,
Yes.
it's this vertical thing. For men, vertical usually looks like aggressive. For women, vertical looks like passive aggressive.
Yeah, fair.
Right?
A lot of resentment,
Yeah.
but we'll do it. Lots of
That's
resentment.
vertical. And then I'm you're not safe.
And there's no connection. There's no
Right.
real intimacy at
No
all.
joy. There's no.
The intimacy, the space gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that kills passion more than some woman who decides she's going to take care of everything because that's what she's supposed to do. You know, no man wants to make love to his mother. So the passion in the relationship just goes.
Yeah.
And it's the biggest buzz passion kill in the world.
Yeah.
And it's the same for a woman with a man.
Yeah.
When a guy just says, I can do it, I've got it, I know it, I'm a how safe do I come? How safe can I feel coming naked to you
Right.
with my soul, with my
Right.
body, with everything, when I know you're kind of full of it? You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
How can I be vulnerable with you and give to you in a beautiful, passionate way
Yeah.
when you're
So,
not home?
It's crazy. And there's so much to talk about.
Can I come back?
Yeah, anytime you want. This has been a gift.
Oh, great. Thank you.
We will do it again.
I agree.
We will
I
do
love
it
it.
again.
I love it.
For those of you watching, listening, and experiencing this, we are grateful that you're here because that's why we do it. So we invite you to keep coming back, and we want you guys to please know that this show is made possible by our friends at Hierophant Publishing, Events USA, and so please check out their work, and we'll see you next time.